I didn't grow up in a house. I grew up in a war zone where silence was safer than love. My name is Sarah. I'm 26, and I have a 6-year-old son named Max. He's the only good thing in my life, and I say that with a heavy heart, because the moment I brought him into this world, my parents treated him like a disease I refused to cure. Max had these soft green eyes and curly hair that my mom once said made him look like a girl. She never said his name. Not once. She called him it, or that thing. And my dad? He didn't speak to Max at all unless he was yelling. I tried my best to protect him. I swear I did. But in that house, love wasn't protection. It was a provocation. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are watching this video. We lived in their basement. A cold, concrete tomb they insisted was enough for someone like you. The upstairs was for them, the chosen ones. My sister Amanda had a room that looked like a catalog cover, heated floors, a vanity table, a bed big enough for 3 people. My son and I shared a twin mattress near the boiler. Every night I'd tell Max bedtime stories while the pipes clanged above our heads. He'd ask me why Grandma hated him, why Grandpa never smiled when he brought him drawings. I never had the right answers. Just broken reassurances and hugs I hoped could replace the warmth he never got from them. It wasn't always like this. Or maybe I just fooled myself into thinking it wasn't. When I got pregnant at 19, my mom sat across from me with dead eyes and said, "You'll ruin your life and expect us to clean it up. But we won't." I stayed anyway. I was young, terrified, and alone. The baby's father was gone before the first ultrasound. My parents offered me a deal. Stay in the basement, work 2 jobs, and don't bring shame to our name. I agreed. Because what else could I do? But things changed when Max started speaking up. He was too smart for his age, too kind, too curious. And in my family, kindness was punished. Curiosity was crushed. It was a Saturday, cold. I was folding laundry while Max was upstairs with my dad. I'd gone to use the dryer in the garage. I heard the yelling before I reached the door. "You don't touch that remote," Dad roared. "I just wanted to watch cartoons," Max said softly. The sound that followed made my heart split open. A slap. A hard one. Max screamed. I ran inside, dropped the laundry, and found my son crouched on the living room floor, clutching his cheek, red and trembling. "What did you do to him?" I screamed. "He disrespected me," Dad barked. I rushed to Max, knelt beside him, and said, "It's okay, baby. I'm here." Dad's boot came down on my ribs before I even finished the sentence. It knocked the breath out of me. I collapsed to the floor, gasping. "You don't raise your voice to me," he growled. From behind him, my mother stood with her arms crossed, her face twisted into a cruel smirk. "She deserved that," she said coldly. "Maybe next time she'll teach her brat to behave." Max was sobbing, not just from fear, from guilt. He kept saying, "I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." I tried to pull myself up, but pain shot through my side. I couldn't breathe properly. My dad didn't offer help. My mom didn't blink. They just walked back to the kitchen like nothing happened. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid on that concrete floor while Max cried himself to sleep in my arms. Every time I shifted, my ribs screamed. Every time I looked at him, I saw the bruise on his face and felt like the worst mother in the world. The next morning, my mom slid a cold plate of toast under the basement door. No apology, no concern. Just a note that said, "Teach your son manners or find another floor to sleep on." I could feel something in me breaking, like a string that had been pulled too tight for too long. I couldn't let this happen again. Not to Max. Not to me. I went to the mirror in the garage that night, looked at the dark bruises down my ribs, the swollen red mark on Max's face, the sadness in his eyes that shouldn't exist in someone who still sleeps with a teddy bear. That was the night I knew I couldn't survive in that house. But I also couldn't just leave. Because monsters don't stop hurting people when you walk away. They find new victims. And I wasn't just going to survive this, I was going to end it. But not with fists, not with screams, with strategy. and silence. Because the thing about silence, in our house, it was always mistaken for weakness. They had no idea it was going to be my weapon. The hardest part of revenge isn't the planning, it's the pretending. Pretending I wasn't limping from the cracked rib. Pretending I didn't flinch every time Dad passed by. Pretending I didn't want to claw my mother's eyes out every time she smirked and said, "Still playing victim, Sarah?" But I did pretend. Because people like my parents only know how to handle noise. I gave them silence. I gave them obedience. I gave them what they thought was submission. And while they laughed upstairs, I was quietly setting traps downstairs. I made sure Max never went near them again. I taught him to go silent when he heard their voices, to hide in the crawl space if things got loud. I started recording. Small things at first, Dad yelling at Max, Mom calling him a stray. Then more, Dad throwing a bowl of soup at my head because I served Amanda first. Mom stomping on Max's art project and saying, "Trash doesn't get to decorate my house." All recorded, all time-stamped, all backed up in a hidden drive in the lining of Max's old teddy bear. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel what they made us feel. I wanted them to question reality the way Max questioned his worth. So I started whispering, seeds of doubt where they'd grow deep. I played recordings of Amanda crying softly when no one was home, just loud enough for my parents to hear, but not find. I left their phones plugged in on low battery, then swapped out their alarms so they missed appointments. Dad blamed Mom. Mom blamed Amanda. I watched the cracks widen with every snide comment at the dinner table. "Don't blame me for your foggy brain, Dan," my mother snapped one morning. "Maybe you should stop drinking at 3 p.m. like a retiree. Maybe you should stop acting like I married you for your personality," Dad fired back. Amanda just stared down at her plate and said nothing. She had no idea I'd sent her job application from my mom's email, followed by a fake rejection letter. One by one, they started turning on each other. I picked up extra shifts at the diner without telling anyone and slowly saved cash. Max and I didn't eat from their fridge anymore. I stored our food in a locked cooler in the garage. Every time Mom threw out my meals by accident, I smiled and told her it was fine. Every time Dad slammed the basement door and said, "Don't come out until that mutt learns to shut up," I whispered to Max, "Just a little longer, baby." And then came the breaking point. It was a Sunday. I remember because the neighbors were out mowing their lawns and I heard a scream so sharp it sliced through the hum of everything. I raced upstairs. Max was in the front yard, clutching his elbow, bleeding. My mom stood above him holding the house keys. "He was running around like a maniac," she barked at me. "He slipped. His fault." "He's 6, I shouted. "What the hell were you doing with keys?" She didn't answer, just turned around and muttered, "Kids like that should come with leashes." I didn't react, not on the surface. But that night I added another file to my collection. A voice note from Max describing how Grandma had chased him out of the house when he accidentally spilled apple juice on the floor. She said I was dirty and she didn't want me inside. He was sobbing, and I made sure every word was clear. 2 days later, I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my former high school teacher, Mrs. Duffy. She'd once told me, "If you ever need help, real help, not the kind that shows up with casseroles, call me." I never forgot that. I emailed her a compressed version of everything, the recordings, the photos of bruises, the voice notes, the log of dates. I didn't ask her to save us. I just asked her to tell me what to do next. She replied in minutes. "This ends now. I'm reporting everything. But if you want out first, I can help you get out clean." Clean. That word haunted me. Because nothing in our lives had ever been clean. Not the basement. Not the names they called us. Not the pain I swallowed for years. But that word gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. We planned for 4 days. 4 days of pretending. 4 days of feeding the beast one last time. I washed Mom's laundry. I complimented Amanda's hideous new haircut. I thanked Dad for giving Max space. They thought I was finally broken, and on that last night, I kissed Max on the forehead and whispered, "Tomorrow, baby, we disappear." But it didn't go exactly like that. because monsters don't go down easy. That morning, Dad barged into the basement with a belt in his hand. Said Max had broken a dish upstairs. He hadn't. I'd seen Amanda do it. But Dad didn't care. "I warned you," he hissed. "No more chances." I stood in front of Max. "Don't touch him." "Move," he growled. "No." He swung. I ducked. And for the first time in my life, I fought back. I grabbed a broomstick and cracked it across his arm. He roared, charged. I fell. He punched me in the side again. Mom came in screaming, "You're a disgrace to this family!" I was bleeding. Max was crying. My mother stepped toward me like she was going to kick me again. Then we all froze. A voice from the top of the stairs. "Sarah?" It was Mrs. Duffy, and behind her, 2 officers. My mother turned white. Max ran to me and clung to my side as the cops stormed in, and as my father yelled, "This is a family matter," the officer simply said, "Not anymore." The sirens faded hours ago, but their echo stayed. The basement looked smaller now that the police tape crossed the stairs. The officers had taken statements, taken pictures, taken everything except the ache in my ribs and the way Max still trembled when someone knocked. They didn't arrest them right away. That's not how it works. They opened a case, collected evidence, promised follow-ups. The words sounded tidy, clinical. Nothing about what happened to us was tidy. Mom stood on the porch when they left, a cigarette dangling from her fingers. "You really think anyone believes you?" she called. "You're trash, Sarah. You always will be." I closed the door. She didn't know that half her world was already collapsing. 2 weeks passed. Mrs. Duffy came every day, checking on us, bringing groceries, helping me file reports. She introduced me to a caseworker who arranged a small apartment through a domestic violence grant. It wasn't pretty, thin walls, peeling paint, but the first night I turned a lock that was mine, I almost cried. Max slept through the night for the first time in months. I thought that would be the end. Survival. But surviving isn't the same as living, and I still woke up with that voice in my head. You deserved that. No, they didn't deserve peace. Not yet. Mom's charity club met every Thursday at the community center. She'd kept her reputation spotless for decades, volunteering, fundraisers, supporting families in need. I knew every name on her donor list. I also knew she kept a flash drive of her financials in the same desk drawer she used for her pills. I waited until she left for her weekly salon visit. Then I borrowed her spare house key from Amanda's bag. She still believed I was rebuilding bridges. I went in, walked past the photo wall where every picture stopped before my pregnancy, and opened that drawer. Inside wasn't just accounting. It was her whole double life. Falsified receipts, fake donation logs, and a letter showing she'd pocketed most of the money her foundation raised. She was preaching charity while stealing from the same church that once paid for my textbooks. I copied everything, printed duplicates, and mailed them in thick brown envelopes. One to the local paper, one to her biggest donor, one to the city auditor. Then I waited. It took 3 days. The first headline hit on a Sunday. Community Fund Fraud Investigation, local organizer under fire. By Monday, her phone was blowing up. By Wednesday, the police were back. Not for me this time. She tried to pin it on Dad, then on Amanda, then on me. None of it stuck. They seized her accounts, froze the charity, and plastered her name across every bulletin board in town. Dad didn't stand by her. He couldn't. Because the same week, the caseworker's evidence and my recordings reached the state's Family Services Department. Every bruise, every date, every slap, every insult. All documented. They filed a restraining order and an elder abuse injunction against both my parents. When the investigators came to question him, Dad shouted, "She's lying! My daughter's unstable!" The officer played back a clip of his own voice. "You don't raise your voice to me." And then my scream, and then his laugh. He didn't have a word left. Amanda disappeared first, packed a bag and left a note that said, "I can't clean up what you made." Mom called me 2 days later from an unknown number. Her voice was cracked, unrecognizable. "Are you happy now?" she asked. I didn't answer. She said, "You'll never be better than me." I said, "I already am," and hung up. The months that followed were quiet. Too quiet sometimes. The kind of silence that used to mean danger, but now just meant peace. I worked double shifts at the diner, saved money, and slowly turned that little apartment into a home. Max's drawings covered the walls, bright, messy, alive. One night, he crawled onto my lap while I was balancing bills and asked, "Mom, are we safe now?" I looked at him, really looked at him, the way I couldn't when I was always waiting for the next blow. His eyes weren't afraid anymore. They were steady, certain. "Yeah," I said. "We are." He smiled and whispered, "Can we make pancakes tomorrow?" That's when I realized revenge wasn't about ruining them anymore. It was about rebuilding us, without their shadows. Still, sometimes I drive by the old house. It's empty now. Windows boarded. Lawn overgrown. The neighbors don't talk about them much. People say Mom moved 2 towns over, living off her sister's pity. Dad was last seen sleeping in his truck outside a bar. They used to laugh at me from their porch. Now, the only thing that listens to them is the wind. I don't celebrate it. I don't cry about it either. I just stand there for a moment, holding Max's hand, and whisper, "You deserved that." Then I walk away, and I don't look back. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are watching this video.